The unexpected sacrifice. The vast expanse of the Orion Arm glittered with countless stars, a deceptively peaceful sight that belied the turmoil brewing within. For centuries, the Zix Imperium had ruled this section of the galaxy with an iron fist, their superior technology and ruthless tactics allowing them to subjugate dozens of species. Humans, one of the newest races to achieve interstellar travel, had become their latest conquest and source of entertainment. On the fringes of Zix space, a small transport ship cut through the darkness, its hull marked with the distinct insignia of the Imperium. Inside, huddled in a cramped holding cell, sat Lyra, a 12-year-old human girl with tangled brown hair and eyes that sparkled with defiance despite her fear. She had been torn from her family's homestead on a distant colony world, chosen for a purpose she couldn't begin to comprehend. As the ship docked with a massive space station, Lyra felt a surge of dread. The station was unlike anything she had ever seen. A sprawling structure of twisted metal and pulsing energy fields, shaped like a monstrous crown hovering in space. This was the infamous Arena of Fates, where the Zix brought beings from across the galaxy to fight for their amusement. Rough hands seized Lyra, dragging her from the cell. The Zix guards, towering insectoid creatures with glossy exoskeletons and multifaceted eyes, chittered in their alien language as they marched her through winding corridors. Lyra stumbled along, her bare feet cold against the metal floor, her simple tunic offering little protection against the chill of space. They emerged into a vast amphitheater, filled with thousands of Zix spectators. Their excited buzzing filled the air, a cacophony that made Lyra's skin crawl. At the center of the arena stood a raised platform, bathed in harsh spotlights. The guards shoved her onto this stage, leaving her alone and exposed. A booming voice echoed through the arena, speaking in accented galactic standard. Esteemed members of the Imperium, today we bring you a spectacle like no other. Behold, a human child, weak, fragile, and utterly insignificant. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Lyra clenched her fists, anger momentarily overriding her fear. She had seen the strength of humanity, had heard stories of their resistance against the Zix. They were not insignificant. The voice continued, and to face this pitiful creature, we present the terrors of the Nyx Nebula, the nightmare of 1,000 worlds. Shadowfang. A massive door at the far end of the arena began to slide open. The crowd's excitement reached a fever pitch as something enormous and dark emerged from the shadows. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she beheld the creature called Shadowfang. It was like nothing she had ever seen or imagined. Towering at least 15 feet tall, its body was a mix of sleek fur and armored plates. 6 limbs moved with surprising grace, ending in wickedly curved claws. But it was the creature's head that truly terrified. A elongated maw filled with gleaming teeth, crowned by 4 eyes that glowed with an eerie intelligence. Shadowfang stalked forward, each step shaking the arena floor. Lyra wanted to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped on the platform, a sacrifice to this monster for the Zix's amusement. As the creature drew closer, Lyra's mind raced. She thought of her parents, of the life she had left behind. She thought of all the human colonies fighting against Zix oppression. In that moment, a strange calm settled over her. If this was to be her end, she would face it with the courage her people were known for. Shadowfang reached the platform, looming over Lyra. This close, she could see the scars that crisscrossed its hide, testament to countless battles. The creature lowered its massive head, those glowing eyes fixed upon her. Lyra met its gaze, her heart pounding but her stance unwavering. Time seemed to stretch. The crowd's roar faded to a distant hum. In that moment, something unexpected happened. A flicker of recognition passed through Shadowfang's eyes. It was brief, but unmistakable. This wasn't the mindless beast the Zix had promised. There was intelligence there, and perhaps something more. Lyra, acting on instinct, slowly raised her hand. The crowd gasped, expecting Shadowfang to snap it off in an instant. Instead, the creature hesitated. It sniffed the air, a low rumble emanating from its chest. Then, to the utter astonishment of everyone in the arena, Shadowfang lowered its head further, allowing Lyra's small hand to rest upon its snout. A hush fell over the amphitheater. The Zix announcer sputtered, unable to comprehend what was happening. In the stands, the Imperium's leaders leaned forward, their mandibles clicking in agitation. This was not the spectacle they had planned. Lyra felt a connection forming, a bond that defied explanation. Shadowfang's mind touched hers, and in that touch, she sensed a kindred spirit. Another being enslaved by the Zix, forced to fight for their entertainment. Without words, an understanding passed between them. The silence was shattered by an enraged bellow from the Zix leader's box. "Kill them. Kill them both." Guards began pouring into the arena, weapons raised. Shadowfang's body tensed, ready for battle. But Lyra, her hand still resting on the creature's snout, had a different idea. "We can fight them," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "But we can do more than that. We can show them that they're wrong about us, about all the species they've enslaved. We can show them real strength." Shadowfang's eyes met hers once more, and Lyra saw agreement there. As the first energy blasts from the guards' weapons sizzled past them, girl and beast moved as one. Lyra clambered onto Shadowfang's back, her small fingers gripping its fur. The creature let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the arena, a sound of defiance and newfound purpose. What happened next would be talked about for generations to come. A human child and a creature of nightmare, working in perfect harmony. Shadowfang's strength and speed combined with Lyra's quick thinking and ability to spot weaknesses in the arena structure. They were no longer prey, no longer entertainment. They had become something the Zix had never expected, a symbol of unity and resistance. As alarms blared and the arena of fates descended into chaos, Lyra and Shadowfang fought their way toward freedom. It was just the beginning of their journey, but already the girl knew that everything had changed. The Zix had made a grave miscalculation. In trying to showcase humanity's weakness, they had instead unleashed a force that would challenge their empire to its very core. Lyra leaned close to Shadowfang's ear as they charged toward a weakening section of the arena's wall. "Ready to show the galaxy what we can do?" she asked, a fierce grin on her face. Shadowfang's answering roar was all the confirmation she needed. Together, they burst through the wall and into the unknown, leaving behind a stunned Imperium and the first sparks of a revolution that would spread across the stars. An unlikely bond. The cold vacuum of space greeted Lyra and Shadowfang as they burst through the arena's outer wall. For a heart-stopping moment, they were suspended in nothingness, debris floating around them like a chaotic asteroid field. Lyra clung tightly to Shadowfang's fur, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. But Shadowfang was more than just an arena beast. With a powerful kick of its 6 limbs, it propelled them towards a nearby docking bay. Lyra realized with amazement that the creature was using the debris as stepping stones, leaping from one piece to another with impossible grace. They crashed through the energy barrier of a small hangar, tumbling onto the deck in a tangle of limbs. Lyra rolled to her feet, her mind racing. "We need a ship," she gasped, scanning the area. Shadowfang's ears twitched, and it let out a low growl. Lyra followed its gaze to see a sleek, dart-like vessel in the corner of the hangar. It was clearly of Zix design, but smaller than their typical warships. Perfect for a quick escape. As they approached the ship, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The Zix were mobilizing, determined not to let their prized attractions escape. Lyra's hands flew over the ship's external console, her brow furrowed in concentration. Come on," she muttered. Growing up on a frontier world, she had picked up a knack for machinery, but Zix technology was far more advanced than anything she'd encountered before. Shadowfang nudged her gently with its snout, then, to Lyra's astonishment, extended one of its claws. A small data chip was embedded in the pad of its foot. Lyra's eyes widened in understanding. She took the chip and inserted it into the console. Instantly, the ship's systems came to life. The boarding ramp lowered with a soft hiss. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Lyra said, grinning up at her unlikely companion. Shadowfang's eyes seemed to twinkle in response. They boarded just as the first wave of Zix's guards burst into the hangar. Energy bolts sizzled past them as Lyra threw herself into the pilot's seat. Her hands danced over the controls, muscle memory from countless hours of simulator games kicking in. The ship lifted off, spinning to face the hangar exit. Lyra's finger hovered over what she hoped was the weapons system. "Here goes nothing," she whispered, and pressed the button. A barrage of energy pulses erupted from the ship's forward cannons, blasting a hole through the hangar's shield. Without hesitation, Lyra gunned the engines, and they shot out into open space. The vastness of the starfield stretched before them, a canvas of infinite possibilities. But their moment of triumph was short-lived. On the sensor display, multiple blips appeared. Zix's pursuit craft, closing fast. "Hang on," Lyra called out to Shadowfang, who had wedged itself into the co-pilot's seat. She pushed the ship into a series of wild evasive maneuvers, diving and weaving through the debris field surrounding the arena of fates. Energy beams lanced past them, some scoring glancing hits on their hull. Alarms blared in the cockpit, warning of system failures. Lyra gritted her teeth, searching desperately for a way out. Then she saw it, a shimmering curtain of energy in the distance. The jump point that had brought them to this sector of space. If they could reach it, they might have a chance. "Almost there," Lyra muttered, her knuckles white on the controls. The pursuing Zix ships were closing in, their weapons fire becoming more accurate with each passing second. Just as it seemed they wouldn't make it, Shadowfang let out a piercing cry. The sound reverberated through the ship, through space itself, and to Lyra's amazement, the jump point flickered and expanded. They plunged into the swirling vortex of hyperspace just as a final volley of Zix weapons fire erupted behind them. The stars stretched into lines, and then they were gone, hurtling through the luminous tunnel between real space and somewhere else. Lyra sagged in her seat, her heart pounding. They had done it. They had escaped. But to where? As the adrenaline of their flight faded, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were alone in an unfamiliar ship, in an unknown part of the galaxy, with the full might of the Zix Imperium surely mustering to hunt them down. Lyra turned to Shadowfang, who met her gaze with those intelligent, glowing eyes. "I guess we're in this together now, huh?" she said softly. Shadowfang rumbled in response, a sound that Lyra was beginning to interpret as agreement. The creature shifted, and Lyra noticed something she hadn't before. A collar around its neck, partially hidden by its thick fur. It was made of a strange, pulsing material that seemed to shift and change as she looked at it. "Is that how they controlled you?" Lyra asked, reaching out tentatively. Shadowfang lowered its head, allowing her to examine the collar more closely. It was warm to the touch, and Lyra could feel a faint vibration emanating from it. As her fingers traced the alien device, Lyra felt a sudden connection, similar to what she had experienced in the arena, but stronger. Images flashed through her mind. Strange worlds, epic battles, and a sense of ancient, cosmic power. She jerked her hand back, gasping. Shadowfang's eyes were fixed on her, filled with an emotion Lyra couldn't quite place. Was it hope? "You're not just some arena beast, are you?" Lyra whispered. "There's so much more to you. To us." Before Shadowfang could respond, the ship's sensors began to beep urgently. They were approaching the end of the jump point. Lyra turned back to the controls, preparing for their re-entry into real space. "Whatever's out there," she said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "Whatever we're meant to do, we'll face it together." Shadowfang let out a soft growl of agreement as the swirling tunnel of hyperspace began to fade. Stars reappeared, coalescing into an unfamiliar starscape. Ahead of them loomed a massive nebula, its swirling gases painted in hues of purple and green. As their stolen ship drifted into the outskirts of the nebula, Lyra felt a mix of fear and excitement. They had escaped the Zix, but their journey was just beginning. There were mysteries to unravel, about Shadowfang, about herself, and about the strange bond forming between them. The nebula seemed to pulse with hidden energy, as if welcoming them. Lyra set a course deeper into its swirling depths. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that she and Shadowfang would face them as one. The Zix had unknowingly set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of their empire. As the nebula's gases enveloped their ship, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. The Zix had wanted a spectacle. Well, she thought, they were about to get one, just not the kind they had expected. Revelations in the nebula. The stolen Zix ship glided silently through the swirling gases of the nebula, its sensors struggling to penetrate the dense cosmic fog. Lyra sat at the controls, her young face illuminated by the soft glow of the instrument panel. Beside her, Shadowfang's massive form filled the co-pilot's seat, its glowing eyes fixed on the viewport. "Any idea where we are?" Lyra asked, more to break the silence than expecting an answer. To her surprise, Shadowfang let out a low, melodious hum. The sound seemed to resonate with the nebula itself, causing ripples in the gas clouds around them. Suddenly, the ship's systems came alive with new information. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a detailed map of the nebula's interior. Lyra's eyes widened as she saw a clear path through the chaos, leading to what appeared to be a hidden structure deep within the cosmic storm. "You know this place," she breathed, looking at Shadowfang with newfound wonder. The creature's eyes met hers, and Lyra felt that strange connection again, a flood of images and emotions that weren't her own. As they followed the hidden path, Lyra's mind raced. "The Zix didn't create you, did they?" she asked softly. "You're something else, something older." Shadowfang rumbled in affirmation. Lyra's fingers found the strange collar again, and this time she was prepared for the rush of information. She saw flashes of a civilization far more advanced than the Zix, of beings that walked among the stars as easily as she walked on solid ground. And she saw Shadowfang, not as a beast, but as a guardian, a protector of cosmic balance. "They enslaved you," Lyra realized, anger bubbling up inside her. "The Zix found you and turned you into a gladiator for their amusement." Before she could process this further, the nebula parted to reveal their destination. A massive structure loomed before them, its architecture unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. It seemed to be made of living crystal, pulsing with internal light and shifting its form even as they watched. The ship was drawn into a docking bay that materialized out of the crystalline walls. As the engines powered down, Lyra felt a moment of trepidation. "Is it safe?" she asked. Shadowfang's response was to stand and move towards the ship's exit. Lyra took a deep breath and followed. As they stepped out onto the crystal floor, she felt a tingling sensation throughout her body. The air itself seemed charged with energy. A voice echoed through the chamber, not in words, but in pure thought and emotion. "Welcome, Guardians. We have awaited your return." Lyra spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice. "Who are you?" she called out. "What is this place?" The crystal walls shimmered, and a figure began to take shape before them. It was humanoid, but made entirely of swirling energy contained within a vaguely crystalline form. "This is the Nexus, young one, the last bastion of the Cosmic Guardians." Shadowfang stepped forward, lowering its head in what seemed like reverence. The energy being reached out, touching the collar around Shadowfang's neck. There was a flash of light, and the device crumbled away to nothing. Lyra gasped as Shadowfang's form began to change. The beast-like appearance melted away, revealing a majestic creature of pure energy, not unlike the being before them. Yet it retained a hint of its previous form, a suggestion of fur, of powerful limbs, of those intelligent eyes. I don't understand, Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. What's happening? The first being turned its attention to her. You, child, are more than you know. Within you lies the potential of the Guardians, a race-long thought lost to the cosmos. Images flooded Lyra's mind. Of her ancestors, humans who had achieved a level of evolution far beyond anything in recorded history. She saw them walking among the stars, protecting the balance of the universe alongside beings like Shadowfang. But I'm just a girl from a colony world, Lyra protested weakly. You are the last of your line, the being explained. Your potential has lain dormant, awaiting the catalyst to awaken it. That catalyst was your bond with the one you know as Shadowfang. Lyra looked at her companion, seeing him truly for the first time. The connection between them had been no accident. It was a reawakening of an ancient partnership. The Zix have upset the cosmic balance, the being continued. Their empire expands unchecked, enslaving and destroying. You two represent hope, the return of the Guardians. What can we do? Lyra asked, feeling overwhelmed, but also filled with a growing sense of purpose. We're just two against an entire empire. You will not be alone, the being assured her. The Nexus will provide you with the knowledge and tools you need. And there are others out there, beings who remember the old ways, who will rally to the cause of the Guardians. Shadowfang, or whatever name he truly had, moved to Lyra's side. She felt his thoughts touch her mind. Together, we can rekindle the light of hope in the galaxy. Lyra squared her shoulders, feeling a strength she had never known before coursing through her. Where do we start? The crystalline walls of the Nexus came alive with star maps and information. First, you must understand your heritage and your powers. Then, you will gather allies. And finally, you will challenge the Zix where they believe themselves strongest. As Lyra absorbed the enormity of the task before them, she felt not fear, but excitement. The Zix had torn her from her home, believing her to be insignificant. Now, she would show them just how wrong they were. They wanted a spectacle, Lyra said, a fierce grin spreading across her face. Let's give them one they'll never forget. Shadowfang's answering roar shook the very foundations of the Nexus. The crystals pulsed with energy, as if the ancient structure itself was coming alive with newfound purpose. And so, deep within a hidden nebula, a girl who had been destined for sacrifice and a creature meant for bloody entertainment began their transformation into something more. The Guardians were returning, and the galaxy would never be the same. Gathering the light, days blurred into weeks as Lyra immersed herself in the knowledge of the Nexus. The crystalline structure became a living library, pouring ancient wisdom directly into her mind. She learned of the cosmic Guardians' history, their fall, and the delicate balance they once maintained in the universe. Shadowfang, whose true name she now knew as Astraeus, was her constant companion. Together, they explored the depths of their reawakened bond, discovering powers that left Lyra breathless with wonder. Watch this, Lyra said one day, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She held out her hand, concentrating intently. Slowly, motes of light began to coalesce above her palm, swirling faster and faster until they'd formed a miniature galaxy. Astraeus rumbled approvingly, his own form shimmering with barely contained energy. Through their mental link, Lyra felt his pride and encouragement. The ethereal being they had come to know as the Nexus Keeper materialized beside them. You progress quickly, young Guardian, but time grows short. The Zix expand their reach with each passing moment. Lyra nodded, her expression turning serious. We're ready, she said, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. Tell us where to go. A star map blazed to life around them, highlighting a series of worlds. These are the seeds of resistance, the Keeper explained. Planets where the echoes of the old ways still linger. Go to them. Awaken the dormant power in those who are worthy. Build your army of light. Lyra and Astraeus shared a look of determination. Their first stop would be Talavora, a jungle world on the fringes of Zix space. As they prepared to leave the Nexus, the Keeper presented them with gifts. A suit of living armor for Lyra that pulsed with cosmic energy, and a set of enhanced bionic implants for Astraeus that would allow him to shift between his energy form and a more inconspicuous appearance. Their ship, now upgraded with Nexus technology, slipped silently through the nebula and into open space. Lyra felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as they approached Talavora. This would be their first real test. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, they were immediately struck by its wild beauty. Massive trees stretched towards the sky, their canopies forming an unbroken sea of emerald. But there was tension in the air. Zix mining operations were encroaching on the sacred forests, and the native Talavorans were fighting a losing battle to protect their home. Lyra and Astraeus landed in a hidden glade, cloaking their ship. No sooner had they stepped onto the mossy ground than they were surrounded by lithe, green-skinned figures wielding organic-looking weapons. "Wait," Lyra called out, raising her hands. "We're here to help." The Talavorans hesitated, their large, almond-shaped eyes filled with suspicion. Then, an elderly figure pushed through the group. Unlike the others, whose skin was a vibrant green, this being's skin had faded to a pale blue. Ancient eyes fixed on Lyra and Astraeus. "The stars sing of your coming," the elder said in a voice like rustling leaves. "I am Zora, last of the Talavoran Dreamweavers. We have awaited the return of the Guardians for generations." Lyra felt a surge of relief. "Then you know why we're here." Zara nodded slowly. "To rekindle the old flame. But be warned, young one. The path ahead is fraught with danger. The Zix have eyes everywhere, and they will stop at nothing to extinguish the light you seek to ignite." As if in response to Zara's words, the distant sound of engines filled the air. Zix dropships were approaching, no doubt alerted to the unauthorized landing. "We need to move," Astraeus growled, his form shimmering as he prepared for battle. Zara gestured urgently. "This way. To the Heart Tree. If there is hope for our people, it lies there." They raced through the jungle, Lyra marveling at how the Talavorans seemed to meld with the forest itself. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Energy blasts began to sizzle past them, igniting the undergrowth. Finally, they burst into a massive clearing dominated by a tree of impossible size. Its trunk was wider than a starship, its branches disappearing into the clouds above. At its base was a pool of shimmering liquid that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "The lifeblood of our world," Zara explained breathlessly. "But it has grown weak, corrupted by the Zix's poisonous mining. We lack the power to cleanse it." Lyra stepped forward, drawn to the pool. She could feel the planet's pain, its desperate cry for healing. Without hesitation, she plunged her hands into the liquid. Power surged through her, raw and primal. Lyra gasped, momentarily overwhelmed. Then she felt Astraeus' presence in her mind, steadying her, helping her channel the energy. A brilliant light erupted from the pool, shooting upwards through the heart tree. It spread through its branches, and then outward, racing through the root systems that connected the entire forest. Everywhere it touched, life was renewed. Corrupted areas were cleansed, withered plants sprang back to vibrant life. The pursuing Zix froze in their tracks, momentarily blinded by the display. The Talavorans, however, began to change. The power awakened something within them, an ancient connection to their world that had long lain dormant. As the light faded, Lyra stumbled back, caught by Astraeus' supportive presence. She looked around in awe. The Talavorans were transformed, their bodies shimmering with barely contained energy. They looked at their hands and wondered, newfound power coursing through them. Zara approached, tears in her ancient eyes. "You have given us more than salvation, young guardian. You have given us the means to fight back." The sound of retreating Zix ships filled the air. This display of power had clearly frightened them, but Lyra knew it was only a temporary respite. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice ringing with authority that surprised even her. "The Zix will return in greater numbers. We need to prepare to organize. The rebellion starts here, but it can't end here. As the Talavarans gathered around them, eagerly awaiting guidance, Lyra felt the weight of her newfound role settle upon her shoulders. She was no longer just a girl running from the Zix. She was a beacon of hope, a catalyst for change. Astraeus' thoughts touched her mind. You were born for this, Lyra. We both were. Lyra nodded, a determined smile spreading across her face. The Zix had no idea what they had set in motion when they chose her as a sacrifice. Their reign of terror was coming to an end, and a new age of cosmic guardians was about to begin. As night fell on Talavora, plans were made, strategies formed, and across the stars, on countless oppressed worlds, a whisper of hope began to spread. The guardians had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The tide turns. Months had passed since that fateful day on Talavora, and the galaxy was abuzz with whispers of rebellion. Lyra and Astraeus had traveled from world to world, awakening dormant powers and kindling the flames of resistance. Each planet they visited added new allies to their cause, each with unique abilities that would prove crucial in the coming battle. On the desert world of Ix, they had awakened the Sand Shapers, beings who could control the very ground beneath their feet. The aquatic Mer of Oceanus Prime brought their mastery of water and unparalleled naval tactics. The winged Ethery of the gas giant Stratos joined with their command of the winds and storms. Now, aboard their greatly expanded flagship, a living ship grown from a seed of the Talavoran heart tree, Lyra stood before a holographic map of the galaxy. Representatives from a dozen liberated worlds surrounded her, each glowing with the rekindled power of the cosmic guardians. The Zix are falling back, Lyra explained, her voice steady and confident. Gone was the frightened girl from the arena. In her place stood a leader, a beacon of hope for the oppressed. But they're not defeated. They're consolidating their forces for a final stand. Astraeus, in his more compact battle form, growled in agreement. They've retreated to their throne world, Zixura Prime. Our spies report they're constructing some kind of superweapon. Zara, the Talavoran elder who had become one of Lyra's most trusted advisors, stepped forward. Then that is where we must strike. Cut off the head of the serpent, and the body will wither. Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the assembled allies. It won't be easy. The Zix have had centuries to fortify their homeworld. We'll be flying into the heart of their power. But we have something they don't, came a melodic voice. Aria, an aethery tactician, spread her gossamer wings. We have unity. We have purpose. And we have you, Lyra. A murmur of agreement passed through the gathering. Lyra felt a swell of emotion, pride, determination, and a touch of fear. So much rested on her young shoulders. Astraeus' thoughts touched her mind, a comforting presence. You're not alone in this, Lyra. We stand together. Lyra took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. Very well. We attack at dawn. As the council dispersed to prepare their forces, Lyra retreated to her quarters. She stood before a mirror, studying her reflection. Her armor, a gift from the Nexus, pulsed with cosmic energy. Her eyes, once ordinary brown, now swirled with galaxies, a visible sign of the power that coursed through her veins. A soft chime announced a visitor. Enter, Lyra called. Zara glided into the room, her ancient eyes filled with concern. You seem troubled, young one. Lyra sighed. I can't help but think of how this all started. I was just a sacrifice, a plaything for the Zix's amusement. And now the fate of the galaxy rests in my hands. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? Zara placed a gnarled hand on Lyra's shoulder. The greatest leaders are often forged in the crucible of adversity. You have grown so much, Lyra. You are more than ready. Before Lyra could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Astraeus' voice boomed over the intercom. Zix attack fleet incoming. All hands to battle stations. Lyra and Zara raced to the bridge. The view screen showed a massive armada of Zix warships dropping out of hyperspace. At their center was a vessel of impossible size, easily 10 times larger than any ship Lyra had ever seen. "It's the superweapon," Astraeus growled. "They've brought the fight to us." Lyra's mind raced. This changed everything. Their carefully laid plans were in shambles. But perhaps this was an opportunity. "All ships, battle formation Omega," Lyra commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "Aetheri squadrons, initiate storm protocols. Mer cruisers, prepare depth charges. Ix sandshapers, stand by for boarding actions." As their allies moved into position, Lyra turned to Astraeus. "We're going in," she said, her eyes blazing with determination. "Right for the heart of that monstrosity." Astraeus grinned, a fearsome sight that would have terrified her months ago. Now it filled her with confidence. "Just like old times," he rumbled. Their ship, nimble despite its size, dove into the fray. All around them, the battle rage. Aetheri storm riders called down lightning upon Zix fighters. Mer depth charges sent shockwaves through enemy formations. The sandshapers of Ix, their bodies glittering with crystalline armor, phased through hull breaches to wreak havoc on Zix crews. Through it all, Lyra and Astraeus pushed forward, their bond allowing them to move as one. They dodged energy beams, slipped through mass driver barrages, and shrugged off impacts that would have vaporized lesser ships. Finally, they'd reached the superweapon. Up close, it was even more terrifying. A twisted amalgamation of Zix biotechnology and cosmic energy siphoned from conquered worlds. At its core, visible through viewport-like openings, sat the Zix Imperator himself, a bloated insectoid figure pulsing with stolen power. "Now!" Lyra shouted. Astraeus roared, the sound reverberating through space itself. Lyra stretched out her hands, calling upon every ounce of her awakened guardian powers. Together, they created a rift, a tear in the very fabric of space-time. Directly in front of the superweapon, the Imperator's eyes widened in shock as his prized creation was sucked into the rift. Lyra gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her brow as she poured more power into the vortex. The superweapon, for all its terrifying might, was no match for the fundamental forces of the cosmos unleashed. With a final, reality-shaking implosion, the superweapon vanished into the rift. Lyra collapsed, caught by Zora's supportive arms. Astraeus, his energy depleted, shimmered back into his more bestial form. Silence fell across the battlefield. The remaining Zix ships, witnessing the destruction of their ultimate weapon and the loss of their leader, began to power down their weapons. Lyra struggled to her feet, leaning on Astraeus for support. She keyed the ship's communications array, broadcasting on all frequencies. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice tired but filled with hope. "The reign of the Zix Imperium is over. But this is not just a victory for the rebellion. This is a new beginning for all of us. The cosmic guardians have returned, not to rule, but to guide, to protect, to ensure that no species need ever fear enslavement or extinction again." As cheers erupted across the comm channels, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. The battle was won, but she knew their work was far from over. Rebuilding a galaxy would be an even greater challenge than liberating it. But as she looked around at her allies, at Astraeus, Zara, and all the others who had joined their cause, she knew they were equal to the task. The Zix had sought to create a spectacle of death and dominance. Instead, they had sparked a revolution of life and unity. Lyra turned her gaze to the stars, shining brightly beyond the fading remnants of the battle. A new age was dawning, and she was ready to face whatever challenges it might bring. The galaxy, once shrouded in darkness, now pulsed with newfound light, and at its heart stood a former sacrifice and her unlikely companion, guardians of a cosmic balance restored.